Page 132, Supply Schedules. A supply schedule is a table that shows how much of a good or service an individual producer is willing and able to offer for sale at each price in a market. In other words, a supply schedule shows the law of supply in table form. A market supply schedule is a table that shows how much of a good or service all producers in a market are willing to and able to offer for sale at each price. So supply schedules appear on a table. Market supply schedule is the combination of all the individual supply schedules. Individual supply schedule on the example. A supply schedule is a two-column table that is similar in format to a demand schedule. The left-hand column of the table lists various prices of a good or service, and the right-hand column shows the quantity supplied at each price. The Smith's supply of tomatoes can be expressed in a supply schedule. How many pounds of tomatoes are the Smiths willing to sell when the price is $1.25 per pound? So you go to the price per pound, you go to $1.25, and then go over, and it is 30. What if the price is 50 cents per pound? Well, since it's less, it should go down. You go to 50 cents per pound, and they're only going to supply 10 pounds. If you go, or $2 per pound, that was a movement up. So at that point, they will supply 50 pounds. Your answers to these questions show that the Smith's quantity supplied of tomatoes depends on the price, and even though it doesn't repeat it there, it is a direct relationship. As price per pound goes up, quantity supplied goes up. As price per pound goes down, quantity supplied goes down. Page 133, Market Supply Schedule. The supply schedule in 5.2 shows how many pounds of tomatoes an individual producer, the Smith family, is willing and able to offer for sale at each price in the market. The schedule also shows that in response to changes in price, the Smiths will supply a greater or lesser number of tomatoes. However, sometimes an individual supply schedule does not provide a complete picture of the quantity of a good or service that is being supplied in a given market. For example, several fruit and vegetable stands at the Montclair Farmers Market sell tomatoes. If you want to know the quantity of tomatoes available for sale at different prices in the entire farmer's market, you need a market supply schedule. This shows the quantity supplied by all of the producers who are willing and able to sell tomatoes. Take a look at the market supply schedule for tomatoes in figure 5.3. Notice that it is similar to the Smith supply schedule, except that the quantities supplied are much larger. It also shows that, as with individual quantity supplied, market quantity supplied depends on price. Below the chart. In Chapter 4, you learn that Raphael, the owner of Montclair Video Mart, used market research to create a market demand schedule. Market research can also be used to create a market supply schedule. Producers in some markets are able to use research conducted by the government or by trade organizations to learn the prices and quantities supplied by all the producers in a given market. Supply curves. A supply curve is a graph that shows how much of a good or service an individual producer is willing and able to offer for sale at each price. To create a supply curve, transfer the data from the supply schedule to a graph. A market supply curve shows the data from the market supply schedule. In other words, it shows how much of a good or service all of the producers in a market are willing and able to offer for sale at each price. Individual supply curve. Study the supply curve created from the Smith's supply schedule. How many pounds of tomatoes will the Smiths supply at $1.50 per pound? How will the Smith's quantity supplied change if the price increases or decreases by 25 cents? Find the answers to those questions by running your finger along the curve. As you can see, the supply curve is a graphic representation of the law of supply. When the price increases, the quantity supplied increases. When the price decreases, the quantity supplied decreases. Notice that the supply curve in figure 5.4 and the schedule on which it is based were created using the assumption that all other economic factors except price remain the same. You'll learn more about those other factors in section 3. So the only thing changing is price, is what that is basically saying to you. Example, market supply curve on page 135. Like the Smith's individual supply curve, the market supply curve for all the stands that sell tomatoes at the Montclair Farmers Market shows the quantity supplied at different prices. In other words, the graph shows the quantity of tomatoes that all of the producers or the market as a whole are willing and able to offer for sale at each price. So rather than looking at a single supplier, it is looking at all of the suppliers in a particular market. So rather than looking at the amount of pizza that Little Italy will sell, it's showing you all of the pizzas available, and in Tupper Lake would be the market, so you would have to consider all of the places that sell pizza. And remember again, supply is always from the producer's point of view. Back to the book. The market supply curve differs in scope from the Smith's individual supply curve, but it is constructed in the same way. As in figure 5.4, the vertical axis, and vertical is the one that goes up and down, displays prices, and horizontal, the one side to side axis, displays quantity supplied. I would like you to know on figure 5.5, notice that the market supply curve slopes upward from lower to upper right, just as individual supply curves do. So you do need to know that supply curves slope up and to the right. That is the opposite of a demand curve. If you go back to the cover of the book, the supply curve is the green one. Look at figure 5.5 one more time down below. We're reading now. What is the quantity supplied at $1.50? So we go to $1.50 and go over, and it looks like it is 250 pounds. How will quantity supplied change if the price increases by 25 cents? So that would be $1.75, and it goes up to 300 pounds, or decreases by 25 cents. So we go $1.50 down to $1.25, and it goes down to 200 pounds. Once again, find the answers to these questions by running your finger along the curve. As you can see, the market supply curve, just like the individual supply curve, vividly illustrates the direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. If the price of tomatoes increases among all of the suppliers at the farmer's market, then the quantity supplied of tomatoes also increases. And conversely, if the price decreases, then the quantity supplied decreases as well. As with the individual supply curve, the market supply curve is constructed on the assumption that all other economic factors remain constant. Only the price per pound of tomatoes change, and you only use one single supply curve to see how price changes impact change in quantity supplied. And let's read the last little paragraph on page 136. Supply curves for all producers follow the law of supply. Whether the producers are manufacturers, farmers, retailers, or service providers, they are willing to supply more goods and services at higher prices, even though it costs more to produce more. Higher prices signal the potential for higher profits, and the desire to increase profits drives decision-making in the market. You will learn more about the costs of production and about maximizing profit in Section 2. So, after you've listened to or read along with the notes, the next thing to do would be to look at after you've listened to the reading, the next thing to do would be to listen to the notes and read along with the notes. It takes me a while to narrate the notes, but I will upload those into Classroom.